Hello there. Today we're here to discuss Virgo Ascendants. So, for clarification purposes, we're discussing this using Vedic astronomical measurements, which means that for people who are used to looking at their charts using the tropical system, most people who see Virgo Ascendant using tropical measurements will actually end up being Leo Ascendants in the Vedic system. This is due to the 24-degree discrepancy between the two systems and the way that they measure the location of the planets. So that also means that Libra ascendants in tropical will often find themselves to be Virgo ascendants in Vedic. Now, there is also a 6-degree overlap period, 6 degree out of 30, where they can be the same in both systems. So it's very, very important that you actually look at the Vedic chart calculators and make sure you're getting the correct measurements to make sure that this reading actually applies to you. So with that said, let's go ahead and get into the topic of our discussion. So Virgo ascendants are something like organizers and helpers. They tend to be very service-oriented people. They tend to naturally want to help those around them, even if they're not consciously or doing it or even wanting to do it per se. It's something like an innate drive in them, and they can even do it energetically, just with their presence and with their aura, organizing and helping and perfecting the things around them over time. Now, a lot of this in that area and where that's focused can also be seen by looking at where Mercury, the ruler of Virgo, their first lord, is in their chart. So, if someone has Mercury in the 10th house, they're going to be more of a direction towards the career and karmas to fulfill in the world and the way that they help other people than might be seen with someone who has Mercury in the 7th, which would focus them more on their one-on-one relationships and helping people. But you'll see that because it's in the ascendant, they'll have this kind of organizing and helping effect in many areas of people's lives. Now, Virgo is a very interesting sign because out of all the planets, each planet rules 2 signs. But Virgo is the sign where its ruler, Mercury, is also exalted in the sign which it rules. And this is very special. And this gives people with strong Virgo placements an extra element of intelligence added to them. So you'll notice that Virgo ascendants really have the ability to be naturally intelligent, to be naturally sensible, to be naturally reasonable, to be more grounded, to be more inclined to respond to reason. Now, certain other placements in the chart can affect this to varying degrees, so let's keep in mind that this is a baseline of Virgo ascendants, but it's something that they have an inclination towards and a high potential to actually be able to embody. Now, something akin to Libra ascendants in this sense is that although they're someone who is a great benefit to others, there's something of a cost to themselves, right? So helping other people and prioritizing other people can in fact be stressful to the individual doing that, especially when it's done often in a very self-sacrificing manner. And so Virgo ascendants do have a bit of a balancing act to play when it comes to the benefits and the services which they wish to provide to others and the type of good that they want to do for themselves. So one way that you can actually kind of see this played out is that because they have Pisces in the 7th house, when it comes to their one-on-one relationships, whether that's a romantic relationship, whether that is their really close friendships in a one-on-one manner, they can be very accepting, very understanding of other people. They can really provide something of a safe haven for people in many ways. And when someone is kind of maybe at the bottom of the barrel, maybe they're falling on hard times, or they're lacking in self-confidence, or something of that kind of a situation, Virgo ascendants can be great friends to those people. The empathy can be quite high. right? So they can find themselves, like, for example, someone who is a friend of theirs and their room is messy all the time. They might come in and help them clean their room, or they might lift them up and be like, you know what, if they're having insecurity issues, they're like, hey, you're actually a really good person, think better of yourself. But when it comes to doing that for themselves, that's where Virgo ascendants can struggle a bit. Because oftentimes one of their greater challenges is actually to take care of themselves, to view themselves favorably, to be positive towards themselves, and to really be able to have faith and feelings of abundance about their own prosperity, about their own confidence, about their own authenticity and success. And there's multiple reasons for this. So one of these things is that Virgo is known for its meticulous ability to organize, its attention to detail, its intelligence, its ability to perfect things, to fix problems, right? And at the same time, in the same way that it can be seen where someone's a really good accountant with Virgo energy, the ability to manage all of their finances and get everything in meticulous order, Virgo also is a sign which denotes having limited resources. So if someone's very, very rich and they're kind of born rich, silver spoon in their mouth kind of thing, they don't really have to as much be super meticulous and make sure every dime and nickel is accounted for because they have such an abundance. But for someone who wants to be successful and they have very limited resources, that's when they're really going to be able to benefit and even develop that skill of making sure everything is in its perfectly organized place. And so when it comes to Virgo being in the first house of self, of their self-image, of their personality, right? They can kind of feel like they themselves are something of a limited resource. So their own confidence, their own feelings of success, their own feeling of like what their worth is can feel too limited to them. And so they kind of have all of these steps in their mind and their consciousness of how to get to a feeling of being worthy, a feeling of being valuable, a feeling of I'm good enough. And this is also seen because of Leo being in their 12th house. Just something, when something's in the 12th house, it has to do with something that's kind of like in the subconscious. It's sort of pushed away so that they can fully embody the sign that's in the first house. So every ascendant has something that's in the 12th house. It's always something that's a little bit discarded so that they can embody that first house energy. And so in order to be this kind of organizer, helper for so many people, in order to constantly offer themselves in service, they sometimes can put themselves and their authenticity and their pride on the back burner. And so for those who are friends with the Virgo ascendant, it's important to value them, to reassure them, to build them up, their confidence, their value, their worth. And as a Virgo ascendant, it's very important to be around individuals who see this about you and who are able to build you up in this way. Right? Because Virgo ascendants are so hard on themselves, it can be very hard for them to take criticism. And it's not because they don't want to be better. It's not because they don't want to be amazing and reach the fullness of their potential. But it's because when someone criticizes them, it kind of can trigger or reinforce these thoughts in the back of their mind of them not being good enough. And so it's kind of like, they're like, oh, you need to do better. And like, I knew I wasn't good enough. I knew it. And then it makes them very stressed out. And so this is another reason why having Pisces in the 7th house is so important, because the people that they really want to form a one-on-one long-term relationship with, whether it be romantic, whether it be long-term friendship in a one-on-one way, they're people that are very, very accepting, kind of go with the flow, someone who just provides a safe space and isn't very critical, isn't pushing them all the time, someone who's able to accept them when they're messy, because it's hard for them to accept themselves when they're messy or, as a work in progress. As helpers and organizers, Virgo ascendants can sometimes see themselves being like kind of going under the radar, not being appreciated as much as they should be. It's kind of like a servant in the house of a noble, and they kind of get overlooked, taken for granted. Not many people sit there and thank their accountant over and over again for all the wonderful work they did by saving them 50 cents on the, you know what I mean? Like, but that is the type of service they provide. It's a type of quiet, humble, often unassuming help, but that's needed. It's like there's people that can come and as a friend and give many flashy gifts. Here's a brand new car, and they're like, whoa, thank you so much. But how many people feel the same way about someone who folds all their laundry for them? Make sure that, comes in and make sure that they're eating healthy. And so a deep need for Virgo ascendants is to be valued and recognized. It's very, very important. And Virgo ascendants, it's important to be able to connect with that and give that to yourself. And it's not to say that you should only be the one giving it to yourself. You shouldn't expect that or want that from other people. But to also give that to yourself is very, very key, because Virgo ascendants, because wherever Virgo is in someone's chart, there's going to be a bit of an insecurity there, a bit of stress. Because Virgo naturally is, in the sixth house. The sixth house has to do with illnesses and problems and disputes and karma, which has to be dealt with, right? But it also signifies the overcoming of those things, the perfecting of those things. So it can denote a sickness, as well as the healthy practices, herbalism and exercise and things like that, that help one to overcome illnesses. And so having that balance is very, very key. Virgo ascendants in particular really benefit from things that help them to detox from stress. So taking things like reishi mushrooms, going to a spa or a sauna, massages. These types of things are really helpful because the nervous system of a Virgo ascendant can be wound really tightly. But their quiet, unassuming intelligence is certainly not to be underestimated. With Mercury both the ruler of and exalted in Virgo, they have the ability to intellectually build themselves meticulously over time. And as they're kind of forging themselves and perfecting themselves in this work in progress kind of way, other people may not notice it as much. But that doesn't mean that those efforts aren't going to pay off over time. And so, Virgo ascendants have a bit of an underdog thing going on. A bit of a, oh, that's just that person, they kind of sleep on it. And then later down the line, boom, something amazing can emerge from it. Kind of like polishing a gem. Something amazing about themselves can be brought to the fore through this meticulous work that they do over time. And the results that they achieve can be quite astounding. Now, the second house of a Virgo ascendant is Libra. And so when it comes to the early family environment that they're born into, they can find themselves in situations where they're born into families where they are playing the role of someone who's harmonizing and balancing things. So it could be that they're born into a family where they're very well liked. Even if they're older siblings or something like that, their other family members are kind of treated more harshly. There can be a favor, a friendliness element to the way that the Virgo ascendant is treated. Now, this isn't always necessarily the case. We got to look at where Libra's ruler, Shukra, Venus, is located, and various other things in the chart like sun and moon to see how parents are behaving, and 10th and 4th house, things like that. But there is an energy of a smoothness that can be there relative to other people in their family. But really, I think one of the ways this tends to play out is that regardless of that situation, they end up having to be the one to harmonize things in their family. They can be the ones born into the situation to smooth things over, to bring a type of uh, joy and peace and things to the situations where they kind of can end up playing a bit of a parent or a bit of a friend to everybody in their family environment to make sure everyone's feeling better. And depending on the situation, that can be quite challenging. And so from a young age, they're kind of already playing this role of helper and, diplomat and someone who's kind of always acting for other people, right? And when it comes to their assets, they oftentimes will need some type of support to build those assets well. So because second house of wealth and assets has Libra there, they can do quite well when it comes to partnerships, bringing them wealth. Now, of course, this does have to be well balanced. Like I said, with other things in the chart, that can become more difficult or easier. But for them to just kind of self-initiate and go out and just do everything on their own, similar to a Libra ascendant, they'll have some challenge in doing that, right? They really like to do things together with either a group or with a partner to help to build up their assets, to help to build up their wealth, and to prosper in various areas in their life. And so they work very, very well, again, kind of like a servant inside of a noble house, right? They're working inside of a type of group, inside of a type of structure where people are prospering, and they are prospering by helping those people. And so the people that Virgo ascendants surround themselves with is very, very important, to make sure that these people have integrity, to make sure that they're people who appreciate and value the often unsung contributions that the Virgo ascendant provides is key. They have to have the ability, because Leo being in the 12th house here, to have the type of spiritual insight to see their value, even though their value is kind of in a hidden world, And so they can end up kind of being these sort of people where people don't appreciate them very much in this kind of everyday sense. But then if people are, in an altered state of consciousness, which 12th house signifies, then all of a sudden they're like, whoa, this person's super valuable. So, kind of in a relationship context, they might break up with somebody who didn't really see their value. And then that person takes a bunch of shrooms and they're like, oh, I had such a great person. Why did I not appreciate? Look at all those things they were doing for me. I never even noticed it. Those kinds of things can be there. So being around people that have high levels of spiritual insight, intuition, spiritual awareness, that will help them to be seen in their value. And another thing is like, kind of getting in a circle and with their partner or with people that are close to them and doing something like taking shrooms together or, a ayahuasca kind of experience. That's when that 12th house is active, is when they can be most seen, like meditating together with their friends in a sort of transcendental way. That's when the appreciation of them can come in even more. So be very aware of that. It's important that the people who they're looking to get that value from, to be valued, to be seen, to make sure that those people have a high level of spiritual awareness, to be able to perceive that as key. And also with Libra being in the second house, their speech can often be something that is sweet to the ears, something that feels good to hear. They're not usually the type, again, unless something else in the chart there indicates it, to just yell or be very commanding or intense or rude with the way that they speak. They tend to speak in a way that makes people feel better, that can smooth things over. Even just their tone can be relaxing. And when they speak, there can be that intention there, right? But then, because it's Libra in the second house, there is something of a dynamic to be careful about again, where when the time comes where they do need to stand up for themselves, where they do need to be assertive, when they do need to set boundaries, those things can be more challenging. They want people to kind of see them and see that they have a need without them first having to express it, without having to assert themselves. So that's something to be aware of as well. And so with all these things going on, they have Scorpio in the third house, which is very interesting because, when it comes to hanging out with friends or, developing skills and stuff like that, they have a deep desire for power and depth there. And so, they can find themselves like kind of being drawn into situations where they're hanging out with a bunch of deep scorpionic people. And, they kind of seem like they're the normal one in the group. It's like, their friends can be super intense and deep and into occultism, into like very, very psychologically aware, into hidden things or accumulating power in various ways. So they have a draw to be around those people. And that helps them to develop their skills in a powerful way. Because a Virgo ascendant wants to feel a source of power from the skills which they cultivate. And so you could find that they have a bit of a dabble into occultism, into finding some way to gain personal power through the cultivation of skills. They have a deep desire to have a strong will. They have a deep desire to have a strong, powerful will, which can overcome their obstacles. And so their casual friend group can actually have a tremendous influence upon them. Through hanging out with these types of people, with these scorpionic people, their sense of power will continually grow. And at the same time, it's very important for them to, again, be aware that because Scorpio is there on the kind of shadow side of that there can be heavy karmic elements or chaos or things like that involved with their immediate friend circle. And so if they're operating, if their friends that they're connecting with are operating on the lower level of that, they can find themselves continually drawn into situations where they kind of have to smooth things over in their, situations with their friends because their friends are all super intense and can be kind of chaotic. But keep in mind that friends really is seen through 3, 7, and 11. There's different degrees of this. 3 is kind of hanging out casually. 7 is the one-on-one relationship. 11 is the network circle itself. And so we see that all their water signs are there in their air houses. And so they have a very emotional connection to the people that they form relationships with. They have that and they definitely want that. But to make sure that that gets to the higher octave of things where they're not constantly giving kind of a self-sacrificing way and not getting enough in return is one of the key elements of balance there to be found. And also, if Virgo ascendants have younger siblings, that can be a very intense relationship. There can be a lot of chaos there. There can be conflict there. There can be power that's gained through the younger siblings. Or the younger sibling can be extremely powerful and mysterious and, rebellious and things of that nature. So that is to be aware of. Just keep in mind that when these dynamics are at play, going within oneself, feeling the octave that it's at, and then kind of healing one's aura and shifting that to the higher octave is very, very key. And so in their fourth house, they have Sagittarius, which means that when it comes to their home environment, they really want it to be a positive, enlightening type of place. Their home can be a sanctuary for their positivity. Because they're so hard on themselves and because they have these types of challenges, when they come home, they want to feel like everything is uplifted for them, like everything's going well. Their home can be a lucky place for them. And so bringing things of wisdom into their home environment can really, really help them. So, a Virgo ascendant, you might find that they have a bunch of spiritual texts or things like that in their home. They may have like whatever, their ninth house, seeing what's going on there can actually be a strong indication. Seeing what their guru, their Jupiter placement is doing will kind of show what their version of the meaning of life is and what it is that they're bringing into their home, which signifies wisdom for them. But kind of having those things there can increase their luck. And it's definitely not an environment where they want anybody to bring them down. So somebody who kind of comes into their home space and is kind of heavy or negative or kind of bringing them down, it's really going to bum them out, and they're not going to like it. And so they're really wanting to feel a lot of prosperity and positivity and upliftment there in that fourth house. And it can bring in elements of luck related to their mother as well. And you can actually see this as well through the Karka Cancer being in the 11th house as well, is that the relationship with the mother can be quite good, particularly relative to perhaps other people in their family. Now, again, we do have to look at the whole chart. So if Moon is very damaged or afflicted, if Guru is very damaged or afflicted, if there are really heavy aspects coming to the 4th or to the 11th, then that can obviously alter this effect. But in and of itself, they can be quite favored by the mother as a baseline for a Virgo ascendant. Now, one of the ways that their organization here kind of comes through a lot is with their kids. And they can be quite strict when it comes to actually raising kids. Strict isn't always necessarily a bad thing, but with Capricorn in the 5th house, they have the ability to raise very disciplined children, to be very organized in the way that they bring their children up. There's an intelligence that's applied here, where immediately once the children are born, suddenly they can become more mature, more organized. They can have more of a clear vision of their future actions when it comes to karmas in the world or career and things like that. So they can raise very career-oriented, successful children as a result of their formulative mind. And when it comes to dating, they can be very professional. They can be very organized. They can be very intentional and strict and have very kind of clear goals about what they want that to bring to them. So they're looking for someone strong, composed, mature, put together. And that is in the dating, not necessarily the marriage house. So I keep that in mind. There's both of those things there. When it comes to dating, they tend to look for someone who's powerful and successful or who has the potential to be. They can date people who are older than them, people who are put together and composed. But then also with Capricorn being ruled by Saturn, when it comes to just having fun and just being super creative and just having a good time and not having kind of any worries or doubts, they can be a bit hard on themselves with that as well. They can be a bit workaholic, And so in that way, like with Virgo, you kind of have that sort of librarian, organized, studious type of, image and mentality and way of kind of going about in the world. They can be like the student in school who gets straight A's, but, doesn't really go and have a whole lot of fun or go just drinking and partying and just kind of doing the things that everyone around them considers fun. They can be more professional in that sphere. And, this has positive effects for them when it comes to staying out of trouble, for example. Again, other things in the chart can get them into trouble, but as a baseline, that can be present there. They can be more mature in situations when other people are just kind of playing around and having fun. So like if everyone's kind of hanging out, drinking and stuff like that, they might be the one who's like being the parent of the group. It's kind of keeping everything together. You can find those kinds of situations taking place. But another interesting dynamic about this is that Virgo ascendants often have a love for art, and they want their art to make them successful. So you can find a lot of actual kind of like closeted artists who really dream of being like career professional artists or being very successful or achieving societal status and things like that through their art very strongly with this, but their confidence in that and, how they balance that with their dreams and the practical view of what that means, that can be the challenge there. So they might practice a lot with their art. They might really love making it. They may secretly want to dream or openly dream of being a successful artist, but they might struggle with feelings of, is that really practical? Can I really make money doing that? or other people in their environment can say that to them. You know, they want there to be the tangible benefit there and the success that comes with that related to their art. But if other things in the chart support it, that can definitely be there. You know, because we also see that we have Leo in the 12th, which gives their art a type of spiritual quality. And so a lot of powerful spiritual, dreamlike, transcendental elements can find their way into their art. And sometimes they may not even consciously be aware of it, or, you know, if they're kind of someone who meditates a lot, or, you know, uses entheogenic or psychedelic substances, then they may be more aware of that. But the ability to channel magic and spirituality into their art is definitely present. And so with Aquarius in the sixth house has to do again with something like problems and illnesses and disputes, and then healthy activities such as eating healthy food and exercise, and litigations where you're like kind of overcoming disputes and things like that. So it's a lot of it is about karma and fixing problems and perfecting things. And they have Aquarius there, the sign of network circles, hopes, dreams, and wishes in that house. And so we can kind of see that there are individuals who end up having to do a lot of things to help people in their network circle, where they can kind of be the person in their network circle who everybody comes to fix their problems. And that when it comes to their own hopes, dreams, and wishes, it feels like they encounter a lot of obstacles and problems, to where it feels like they're helping so many other people to accomplish what they want. And then when it comes to what the Virgo ascendant wants, it seems like they have all these things and not as many people are there for them. And so this is why, again, you know, reinforcing just the types of people they connect themselves to are so, so important, to make sure that they have the proper support, to make sure that that network circle comes through for them and helps them with their problems as well. Because Virgo ascendants are very interdependent naturally with other people that they form relationships with. And another aspect about this that's interesting is that there are rewards for their act of service in a karmic sense. And so by helping other people and their network circles with their issues and solving those things, they're actually working through geometry and karmas and things like that within themselves. And so, you know, especially as they're younger and stuff like that, they may or may not see the immediate results from their kind of service oriented attitude. There is good karma that is accumulated through the act of helping so many people with their issues. And that, you know, you got to look at the Navamsha to see where Aquarius is and what's going on with their 11th house in Navamsha and so many other things to kind of get the full picture. But those good karmas can kind of come and grant them rewards maybe when they're not expecting it. Because when they are expecting it and kind of coming to come, you know, just like they're going to go out and they're going to do something good and they're expecting an immediate return, they might not see it as quickly. But it is there and it is accumulating. And so there is very much a kind of work in progress, success through organizing and doing all this meticulous work with limited resources that over time grants them a reward. And so when it comes to their 7th house of relationships, it's very important that they are with a partner that makes them feel at peace. Someone who they're able to live an everyday life with that doesn't cause them stress, doesn't cause them issues, isn't critical of them, isn't someone who is unappreciative of them. You know, someone who's very go with the flow and has the spiritual insight, the intuition, and the awareness to naturally perceive their value, to feel what their needs are, to tend to them without them having to ask for it. You know, it's something that flows naturally. It's something that just kind of like emerges from the world without much effort. So they really look for that peace in their partner. And so it can be someone who other people might not really see as a valuable partner. that they find themselves with. It could be kind of like the normal person, you know, that they're dating, that from other people's perspective is someone who seems very unassuming. But there can be a deep artistic and spiritual, dreamlike quality to the partner, whether or not the outside world sees it. And they value that, the Virgo ascendants. They value that in their partner. Someone who is artistic, someone who is childlike in their spirit, someone who's innocent, someone who has magic flowing through them. You know, and that practice that they have really can help to heal the Virgo ascendant themselves. And so they really look for partners that they have a strong spiritual connection with. There can be a destiny like element to the person that they want to form a relationship with, something that feels beyond the world, because they themselves are so focused on the everyday happenings of the world, and they have to manage all of that. And so finding that in a partner is very, very nourishing to them. Now, something to be aware of on the lower octave of the Pisces element is that they can also find people that are not as well adapted to everyday life, to where whatever it is that they're focused on, whatever it is that their partner loves, their spiritual practice, their art, you know, whatever their dreams are, it can be rather ungrounded from the practical. And so, in that sense, the Virgo ascendant can be something like an organizer for that person. You know, it could be like they're dating some amazing artist or meditator, you know, but they wake up and their house is kind of messy and they're not very good at finances, and you know, they're kind of like teetering on a 3D collapse of some sort, and they're just like kind of bringing them and putting them together and coming in and helping to assemble and organize that person. And so making sure that the Virgo ascendant is able to balance the saving act of coming in and being that kind of 3D organizer for their partner, and you know, making sure that they're not being dragged down into any type of like addiction or escapism, because their partner can also be someone who is very much trying to escape from the world while they're trying to succeed in it, while they're trying to make sure everything is organized and well. And so making sure that the octave is where the Virgo ascendant wants it to be is important. And that brings us to the eighth house, where we have Aries. And that's a very interesting placement, because Aries is a person's individualistic energy, their energy of drive and accomplishment of self. And we have it in the eighth house. And so again, we get that kind of somewhat covert interest into the occult, into the hidden nature of things, into power. And the more that they're able to grasp these eighth house dynamics, they have a drive to, the more they can actually build up their confidence. The more they understand about psychology, being able to recognize things like we're talking about, being able to have the psychological analytical ability to perceive who values them and who doesn't, who appreciates their seemingly unassuming work and who doesn't. That's a psychological skill. And that can bring them confidence and power. They can have boundaries to be like, you know what? I, you know, may have helped that person in the past, even though it's like pouring water into a bucket with a hole in it. But because I have the psychological skill, now I realize that I need to say no to that person and look for someone who I know is going to appreciate it, and it's going to be more reciprocal, more balanced. Right? Doesn't mean that they won't help people, but they have to make sure that they're not wasting their energy. And it also shows that when it comes to showing their authenticity, showing their power, their aggression, these things are often hidden from other people. And so when it comes to their relationship, being with someone who is a safe place for them to express that part of themselves helps to nourish that relationship. The eighth house can nourish the seventh house. And so if they're with a partner who is very kind of in the escapist side and octave of Pisces, but they can't really assert themselves and really show that part of themselves that is driven and powerful and ambitious, it can be hard to maintain it because it will start to feel like they're suffocating a bit in that relationship. And so a partnership that's able to nourish that part of them really, really helps them to thrive. And it also shows, again, another support of how powerful they can be when they form the right partnerships. Eighth house has to do with other people's money, for example. And so there's a lot of power and self-confidence that comes when they form relationships and bonds with people who are powerful and who have their best interests at heart. Someone who brings power to them. It's like a high that can just make them feel so exhilarated. They're like, wow, this person like has money, has power, and they're just coming straight to me to benefit me with those things without me even having to ask. Whoa. Boom. All of a sudden they're filled with vitality. All of a sudden they're invigorated with life energy. And it's something that they really, really deeply look for. And so, Virgo Ascendant, it has this, very prudent kind of energy to it. Virgo is very prudent. So it can be like the librarian who's dressed well and, who always says no to drugs and always, doesn't have sex before marriage kind of vibe. Whether or not they actually do those things at all is another matter, but it has that type of vibe. And so with Aries there being in the eighth house, they can be like secretly really kinky. They secretly actually want to do a lot of things, but it has to be in an environment where it's hidden and other people are going to kind of find out about it and they can have a lot of fun. And so connecting with someone who has that discretion, isn't going to betray them, gives them a safe space to do that in private, to really express themselves in an intense way, could be very exhilarating for a Virgo ascendant. So with Taurus in the ninth house, this is a very interesting placement because the ninth house has to do with higher knowledge, with the meaning of life for that person. It's like each person's philosophical outlook. And so Taurus here is indicating that a very, very important part of the meaning of life for them is the prospering materially. It's the wealth, it's the luxury, it's the sensual pleasure. And considering how stressed and kind of tightly wound Virgo ascendants are, that makes a lot of sense. And how it's an earth sign ascendant and it's so focused on organizing and succeeding even with limited resources, the kind of dream, the kind of meaning of life aspiration, what a lot of that ends up being for potentially is to thrive, is to be materially prosperous in the 3D. And so it's very important that, like, for example, whereas, someone who has Pisces or Scorpio in the ninth house, the meaning of life to them could be about magic and about spirituality. And that's like the reason why they came. It's like their philosophical outlook is woven around that. For a Virgo ascendant, things like if they have a text that's a spiritual text to them, it might be something like Think and Grow Rich, manifestation texts and knowledge, that material karma, in India they call it karma or pleasure, that is something that's very, very important for them to learn how to do. They want to study, they want to become wiser so that they can thrive and feel good and feel pleasure. And so the more wealth that they have, the more sensual material benefits that they have, good tasting food, amazing clothes, all those types of things will make them feel very, very lucky, very prosperous, like they're winning in terms of the meaning of life for them. And it does actually also grant them luck in response to accumulating those things and figuring out where their Venus, Shukra, ruler of their ninth house, and their second house is. is very, very key to figuring out how that works and where Mercury is, which is their first lord. Because Venus here is ruling both their second house of wealth and assets, as well as their ninth house of the meaning of life. And so really kind of getting in tune with that energy is really important. Again, kind of going back to what we were saying in the beginning of the video of how do they nourish themselves with that? Because they're so often giving it to others so that it can be given back to them in exchange. But building up that type of energy within themselves, that Shukra energy, can be very, very beneficial. Learning how to actually accumulate and hold it, finding the right connections to make, studying the right knowledge on how to make wealth is really important. So when it comes to higher education for them, learning how to achieve that is very important for them. Study books like Think and Grow Rich and manifestation methods and types of magic. That is something that will increase their luck, prosperity, and put them on the right path for what they want to achieve in that sense. And so when it comes to their 10th house of career status and the karma that they want to achieve in the world, they have Gemini there. So here we have a link between their first house and their 10th house. Again, signifying the importance that Virgo ascendants place upon success in the world. And with Gemini, they have the ability, when it comes to their career, they have the ability to have either multiple careers, so kind of like doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of that kind of a thing, or, you know, kind of a challenging aspect of it is when they try to just commit themselves to one career. They just try to like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to succeed in this one thing. It's very challenging for them to do that, to just have one career and succeed. If they try to force themselves into that, they'll often find that they may transition from one job to the next job to the next job. When it comes to career, now keep in mind that career is different than just a 9-to-5 job, which is more sixth house. When it comes to their career, if they're just trying to keep it on one thing, it can cycle them through multiple jobs and find it hard for them to actually stick to one. So they really work well when they're doing either multiple things for their career, where they're weaving multiple things together. They could be an artist who also does, like a painter who also does podcasting, you know, who also sells things online. And they kind of have a multifaceted type of career that can work very well for them. But also a career that has to do with communication, multimedia, those kinds of things they can find success in as well. But also with Virgo being in the ascendant, they can be a bit shy. So they may not often want to be the person that's like the face of that multimedia endeavor. They may want to be more in the background or may adjunct to, sort of adjunct to it. So for example, if they're doing a podcast, they might want to be, you know, either just kind of like on the side of the podcast, or someone who kind of comes on periodically or who helps with it, or, you know, they're not the host of it, but, you know, they're working together with the face of it. And that way they can be a bit more in the background. Keep in mind, with Aries in the 8th house, their sense of drive and self and independence is often hidden. So they like to actually kind of be powerful, but behind the scenes. They want to be influential, but a bit behind the scenes. And so finding that balance there is also really beneficial for them. But definitely diversifying their career interests. And the more that they're able to communicate with people, if they find the right people with the right octave, they can rise to great heights. Because Gemini, which naturally belongs in the 3rd house, you know, their 3rd house is Scorpio and their 10th house is Gemini. And so they can actually achieve power and success and status through people who they hang out with, through people who they speak with or communicate with in a friendly way. And so they can really find very powerful acquaintances. And if they do that correctly, that can contribute to their success substantially. And that brings us to their 11th house, where we have Karka, Cancer. And so here we see that they can actually form very deep emotional attachments with their network circle. You know, they can feel most at home, relieved, safe, held, and cared for by seeking that out in community, by seeking that out through their social networks. And their social networks can bring them nourishment and feelings of safety. And so they often make very, very good friends, people that support their network circle. They can be kind of like the mom of the group kind of dynamic, where they're taking care of people. They bring a vibe of nourishment to the group. Because Guru is exalted in Cancer, they can also be wise counselors for their network circle. Now, this, of course, does correspond to where Guru is in their chart and things like that, but that's something that they can see, is that they can be very helpful and nourishing and good counselors, kind of like raising their group like a mom. And when it comes to their actual mom, and again, we do have to see the whole chart, like fourth house and moon and stuff like that, their mom can bring them incoming gains, wealth, help them fulfill their hopes, dreams, and wishes, or the mom can just be a very good friend, a benefit to her or him, whoever the Virgo ascendant is. So they can also have very deep emotional connection with their elder sibling. They can also end up being a mom to their elder sibling, or their elder sibling can be like a mom to them. So there can be care expressed one way or both ways through the relationship with the elder sibling or with the mom themselves and with the network circle. And when it comes to their incoming gains, interestingly, healing their relationship with their mother, with their matrilineal ancestry, can actually help to increase their incoming gains. And so, like, if a Virgo ascendant is like having a lot of like hostility or arguments or resentment with the mother, it can actually constrict the incoming gains. And so healing that, whether it's just healing their relationship with their mother, or say if the matrilineal ancestry has some issues or trauma or things like that, literally healing those things, whether it be energetically, in person, there's many ways to go about doing that, can increase their incoming gains and help them to achieve their own wishes in life. And so this brings us to the 12th house with Leo. And so we touched on this multiple times throughout the video, that their sense of authenticity, pride, being celebrated, their regality, their nobility is somewhat hidden in the 12th house of their subconscious. And so connecting with this can help them to overcome the dynamic of being the overlooked one. So if, for example, a Virgo ascendant has been struggling a lot in life, where they've been experiencing that overlooked, unappreciated dynamic a lot, taking some time to meditate very, very deeply, going out into the forest and taking shrooms or something like a ayahuasca in a very safe, wise environment, in a wise, safe way, can actually help to activate that Leo energy, to bring that out. They may be someone who isn't really seen much when it comes to the everyday situation, but suddenly when the group gets together and, they're all drinking together, or they're all meditating together, or they're all, doing a psychedelic or an enthean together, suddenly the Virgo ascendant might be the brightest person in the room. Suddenly that regality and royalty and authenticity and specialness can be seen in that space. And so even though Virgo ascendants have such a focus on 3D, such a desire to master that sphere of life, even if they don't really, really want to, but there's an kind of an impulse, a compelling element about them that kind of puts them in that space. So much of them and their truth and their vulnerability and their authenticity and their love and their desire is seen coming through when they actually connect with the spiritual. And that by doing that, it can contribute greatly to their success in the material. So unifying those two aspects is very, very key. And for a Virgo ascendant, paying attention to their dreams can be very important as well. So much information about who they really are, about the paths in life that involve choosing themselves and what that looks like and what they need to do regarding that can come through in their dreams. You know, with Magha there as well, they can have psychic powers that activate in their dreams. You know, things about their lineage can come through in their dreams. So paying attention to that space is very important. So despite Virgo's seemingly prudent and unassuming nature, beneath all of that control and that self-sacrificing is someone who's very full of life and vitality and desires. These are helpful, kind, organized people that really often want the best for those around them, and who deep down really hope that those people and friends and family are able to notice them, appreciate them, value them, and return the kindness that they give out to others. So I hope you found this video to be helpful. If you have any questions or comments or insights, please post them in the comments below. I would love to talk more on these topics and respond to those comments. And I look forward to discussing other ascendant placements and other profound topics on the meaning of life stuff in future videos. Take care.